Hello and welcome to the daily pandemic update, and we're back here on the 26th of March 2020 with the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center. And the first thing that we're going to look at today is it likely that spring or summertime will slow this virus down? So there's this thing with the influenza virus that it tends to do better in the colder hemisphere. So when it's winter in the north, of course, then it's nice and warm in the south. And so the virus tends to do very well up here and very badly down here. And then as it goes from summer to winter, you can get this thing called hemisphere hopping, where the influenza sort of flips from one hemisphere to the other, and then it does better in the southern hemisphere when it's cold there, and not so well in the northern hemisphere where it's warm, where it's summertime. And the reason for this, of course, is a lot of how the virus spreads is in little drops of water. And when those drops of water dry out, it limits the shelf life of the virus, it limits the spread of the virus. Now, the most obvious thing here is there is no sign that this virus has any great reluctance to be killed out where it's warm. So obviously it's kind of wintry in the northern hemisphere, which means it's kind of warm in the southern hemisphere. And there's not really any great signs that it's doing any worse in the southern hemisphere. And at the equator, where it's always hot, there's no real signs that this is a big problem for the virus. And also, we're going to take a look at some countries that got this mostly under control and the steps that they had to do it. And one of the key things is doing something by the time you get about 500 cases, because this is South Korea, who did an excellent job of getting on top of this thing. And this is roughly the best case scenario. This is the almost best you can hope for. They started strict measures by the time they had about 500 cases, which is 1 week before the end of February. And by the beginning of March, 1 week later, they're in the linear regime. And another week later, you're sort of transitioning into the new low spread rate. Now, they've still not contained it, and to a degree, you really can't at this point, because if you relax all of your restrictions, you're still getting 100 new cases a day here, which means that if you relax the measures now, you just restart the curve from this point, which means that within another week, you will be in the exponent phase again. So this is one of the problems with dealing with the virus. Now, so this is almost sort of textbook what you hope these things look like. Ideally, you want this to level out completely and go to 0 new cases, which is why with China, let's take a look at China. They were sort of getting on for this, and then it spread all over the country at this point, which is this huge burst in new cases. So on the very first day here, China had shut down a city of Wuhan that is it's about the size of New York City, for 500 cases. So they were taking it pretty seriously fairly early on, and they were pretty draconian in shutting it down. And once they realized it had spread, they shut down, they quarantined 50 million people or something, and everyone had to download this app and record their temperature twice a day. And this is almost the only other place where it looks like it's sensibly under control. And you sort of know it's got to be sensibly under control, because if this had actually gone exponential by mid-February, the entire country would have been infected, and you would have millions of dead by now. The other great success story from this part of the world is Japan. Japan has done phenomenally well in that, if you think about it, Japan has a population of about 150 million, population of Japan is only about half of the US population. And it's crammed into a tiny, the population in density in Japan is just obscene. And even at that, they've managed to limit it to a few thousand cases. Now, admittedly, there's no real sign that it's sort of slowing down, but at least it's linear. They're sort of fairly contained like that. America is still just out of control, and it's just all the wrong messages coming from the leadership that, maybe we can't just shut down our economy for this. And, well, yeah, this is so true. You don't have to. This is what it looks like in America at the moment. It's not even this is just purely in the exponent phase. And I think I had it here. They declared the state of emergency in New York on March 16th, which is here, when there were 5,000 cases. So that's this is an order of magnitude later than places like South Korea and China had taken these really draconian measures. And you still got Trump saying that we can't shut down our economy, and if you don't do that, you're going to be looking probably at best at about 2 million dead, which is give or take about 10 times the death toll from World War II for America. It's 1,000 times the death toll of 9/11. It's that sort of order of magnitude. And not only that, I mean, what does that say? That let's just assume that that's what America does. What does that actually say about the soul of America? It's of those 2 million people, by the way, about 1 million will be from the working population. What does it say that you're willing to just throw that sort of number of people under the bus because you're worried about the economy? In any event, that probably would still be the wrong decision to make, even if you were trying to do it to save the economy. In that the chances of the virus mutating is basically proportional to the amount of virus in your country. And if you have a complete runaway epidemic, then you get a disproportionate amount of virus in the country. There's chances of it changing into something which the people have already been infected by it. They might be immune to the old strain, but not to the new one. This is the sort of thing that you get with the flu, with the influenza. So there's the chance that happens. There's the chance that the new variant is even more dangerous than the old one. And, you're just completely rolling the dice with the entire country on a roll of the dice. Even with the entire country in lockdown, you're still looking at least 2 weeks until you favorably get to the South Korea position. And even at that, you've got to be really vigilant at this point, because if you're not, you just right, the entire country is still potential virus food. You've only infected some tiny fraction of the country. The only thing that you can do is try and keep it under wraps till you get a vaccine. Anyway, so that's the virus wrap up for today, which, the most probably important take home message is, the key take home message is, it looks really unlikely that the warm weather of summer will have any effect whatsoever on the spread of this virus. So with that, I'll wish you again, stay safe. The most effective way to avoid spreading the virus is, of course, to avoid contact with other people. And if you have to be in contact with other people, social distancing and hygiene is the best you can do. But even better than that is just to not be directly in contact with other people. So, good luck and see you next time.